tweet out there somewhere?
Yeah. No, I don't care if it is Tim Cook. No, I'm talking to her now, and if he wants to talk to her, he can call her himself. Yeah, I'm on with Jeri. So just, okay, tell him to call her directly. Don't bother me again, Tim. All right. Hey, everybody, it's us. How you doing?
It's amazing.
Hi, Ben. How are you?
I'm alive and kicking.
Cool. We have a special guest today. We have Jeri Ellsworth with us, otherwise known as just Jeri. Hey, Jeri, how you doing?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me on. I've been wanting to do this for a long time. Finally, we found some time to line up.
It's amazing, and it's so great having you on the show. Thanks for joining us. You're a very busy CEO.
Yes.
So this is actually quite an exception that you could carve out some time. So
yeah, actually, the biggest challenge I have with your podcast is not that all my time is consumed. I have little blocks of time, but I have a long commute to work, and it's right in my commute time. If I leave in the morning, it's like a really long commute. But if I leave just after everyone's all the 9-to-5ers are already at work, I can cruise right in.
It's the best way to do it.
You must live in California.
Sigh, yes. In Silicon Valley, which only LA probably tops the demolition derby freeways.
Right. My sister lives in LA, and she's very proud of the fact you have to be in the right lane 12 miles ahead of time and stuff. Yeah. And
so
go ahead.
Should I be worried? I was planning this year to actually drive to VCF West from San Diego, but I probably will have to leave at 4 a.m. so I don't have to get that horrible LA traffic.
Hey, pro tip, take a nice good nap at 6 p.m. and then just drive through the night. Just clear sailing all the way through.
Could do that. Yeah.
So I've been amazed here in Silicon Valley. It's, every day there's a crash on the freeway, and it's almost always Teslas. I'm just wondering how many of them are the auto drive going crazy. It's I'm there's a big pile up front. Oh, yep, a Tesla right in the middle of it.
Even AI gets angry in traffic.
Well, what I like is when you get the firemen going, yeah, we've been putting water on it now for 4 hours trying to put it out.
Well, that's our after work fun, is taking puffy lithium batteries out in the parking lot and punching them open and dumping water on them. It's exciting.
So, hey, you saw the picture I posted, our slate that has you with the burnt finger?
Yeah.
How did you do that? You want to share that with us? I'll try and get a picture up of it.
Okay, so that was eons ago. I was working at a company called New Tech, if there's any Amiga fans out there, and video streaming was a brand new thing. And I was working on, the subsequent video toaster to TriCaster, a way to stream. And so I'm I need to learn how to stream video if I'm working at a streaming video company.
Right.
And so a group of us were doing this Sunday live stream where we would just do stuff. Sometimes it was dumb and dangerous, and sometimes it was, engineering based. And I got this wild hair that I wanted to make what's called rocket candy. So it's rocket fuel made out of Caro syrup and regular granular sugar and stump remover, which is potassium nitrate.
Yep.
You mix this concoction together and you heat it.
Make your own rocket fuel.
Over a hot plate, which is super dangerous. Yep. But anyway, I've done this many times in the past. I used to make my own rocket engines out of this stuff, and I wanted to do it for this live stream. And so I was making candy canes out of it, which was kind of fun, and lighting the candy canes on fire so they burn, kind of slowly.
Right.
And someone stopped by, and I'm like, "Hi, hey, take a look at this rocket candy." And I grabbed a little fluffy piece that was in the bottom of the bin or the container that I made it in, and held it in my hand and lit it. But surface area, I was not thinking about the surface area. So the rate of burn is magnitudes faster when there's a lot of surface area. And so burned holy hell out of my fingers. And of course, what do? You know, being a pyro, you laugh about it at first. And someone was right there when I did it, as I was like, I'm an idiot. And I don't know. I think, I was 15 years younger. I think I looked pretty good in that picture. So
you look great. I mean, you got the styling, the hair in one eye, front of one eye and stuff. Yeah.
And the devious look.
Yeah.
But yeah, that thing blistered up bad. It was 3rd-degree burn on the end of my finger. Yeah. So it was a little difficult to type after that.
That's got to be an impedance to productivity for sure.
Yeah.
Hey, that's one of my shirts. Actually, that's a very relevant shirt. If it smells like chicken, you're holding it wrong.
I love it. Engineering humor is kind of the best humor, really.
Oh yeah, I've got my IT crowd shirt on. Father!
Yes! Brilliant.
Very cool.
Before the show started, I said I was the weird kid when I was younger.
Right.
I never grew out of that.
Believe.
So. Yeah. It's more acceptable these days, but in the 80s, weird nerd kids were the punching bag of everybody else.
Well,
in elementary school, yes.
You used 110 volts to make a soldering iron, right?
Not 110 volts. I used probably like a 12-volt wall wart hooked to a wire wound resistor to make my first soldering iron. So I found that you take a wire wound resistor, you hook it up to something that had some real current that could push through it. It starts glowing, and the little steel lead coming out of it makes a pretty nice, fine soldering. It just stinks like hell for the first 10 minutes as you burn all of that toxic conformal coating off of it.
Yeah, that's right.
We had a electronics teacher show us. He's like, don't ever do this, but if you take the 40 amp power supply built in your bench and a graphite pencil tip, you can make an arc. and they did. I mean, it'll blind you if you're not careful.
Well, it's funny you say that. As a kid, I loved pencil lead because you could do that, or you could just hook it across a high current supply, and the whole thing would glow cherry red, and then start, little like sparkles.
Pyro, aren't you?
Yeah, yeah. We had those old like plywood varnished school desk type things in some of the labs, and several of them had long, thin strips where the graphite had burned its way down into it. Yeah.
Bill brought up memories of my first soldering iron, and my father didn't want to buy me a soldering iron because he was worried I was going to burn the house down.
Right.
And so in my bedroom, I'm soldering with this thing when Dad's not around, and of course you don't have like anything to hold it. You're like trying to balance it on things, and one day it like flopped off and landed in like, I think we had old 70s shag carpet, and burned this like deep mark in my bedroom. And so of course Dad comes in one day and he sees this big resistor shaped burn mark in the carpet, and he's like starts interrogating me, and I had to fess up, and he's like, okay, let's go to Radio Shack and get you a soldering iron.
Yes.
And let's talk about how to use it safely.
Right.
That's the right approach. Your dad was awesome. I've heard some of your stories about how he basically saw the gifting in you at a young age and actually let you just do it rather than trying to make you someone you're not. And I think that's critical to good parenting. Anyone who tries to talk their children into being something else, and your dad didn't do that, and that's why we have this gem, Jeri, today. No, I mean, I'm not trying to flatter you. I'm sorry if I don't want to offend you, but it's you've done.
Don't get me wrong. My father tried to guide me at times and steer me out of doing really dumb things, but I don't know. I think I was born with
love and protection, right? It's not like there is a difference, I think. Not burning yourself or burning the house down. That's understandable. But
my father and I were not particularly happy with each other in my teen years. By that time, I picked up all of his swear words, and I was working for him after school at work, probably so he could keep an eye on me, so I didn't, as he said, end up dead in a ditch, face down.
Right.
And I don't know. Yeah, there was this one time, like, I don't know, we were having a little spat, and I was being the angsty, gothy teenager, and like, there was like this sliding door between the shop area and the office where he'd hang out all the time. And, you know, I go and slam the door, and I'm in the shop area. And I said something like, "Mother effer," you know, and he slid the door open like he read my lips or something off some reflection. Like, I heard that. Like, right. But yeah, that was a short little period. We got back on track pretty quick.
Well, that's cool.
After I started racing cars, and it was something to like distract me from just being a screw up all the time.
Right. It's still dangerous as hell, but now it's on the track instead of dead in a ditch somewhere.
Yeah, exactly.
That's very cool. So
still,
what are you doing now?
An ideal outlet for creative mind. You must have a brain, and I can somewhat relate to this being ADHD, but that you just have so many ideas all the time, right?
I think for me, I was always a big dreamer. And when I was much younger, all I could do was dream, and I didn't have the skills. And that was frustrating for me, but also kind of gave me those dopamine hits. So, you know,
right.
Sometimes I recognize those traits in other people that just sit there and dream about what they're going to do, but they don't go out and get their skills. But luckily, I had good mentors along the way. Some ham radio operators helped me. My father was a great mentor. And I started picking up some of these skills in electronics and physical things, and, you know, all the things that, you know, kind of set the direction for me. If that hadn't been there, I don't know, you know, would I have been stuck as the perpetual dreamer that could never, you know, execute, or what? I don't know. And so, talking about kids, I love to mentor whenever I get like a spare moment. Hopefully I can plant a couple seeds here and there, and 20 years down the road, they can talk about that old lady that was long-winded talking about back in my day.
Wearing roller skates.
Yeah.
So Jeri was holding up her roller skates before the show because every office in Silicon Valley needs a pair of roller skates.
And a pinball machine, or 20.
How many do you have?
I think probably 15 or something.
Wow.
Maybe if we get brave, I'll take you on an office tour.
Well, you did mention that Sunday after VCF, you might be doing an open house sort of for a small group. And so I have mentioned that to like Leonard Trammell and stuff.
That would be wonderful to get Leonard out. I haven't seen him in years. But yeah, so our office is pretty large for a Silicon Valley office. So we have space. We can probably get about 60 people in here. So the concept is, since VCF couldn't get the space Sunday, we're like, hey, you know, our office is like a museum. Like, why don't we have people out? And so maybe we can get about 50 or 60 people in here, and we'll buy the beer and pizza, and you guys bring the nerdiness. And
right. Oh, that's cool.
No agenda, just come there. You know, if you have something fun to show, I guess we could get a table and set it up or whatever. And we were thinking around noon, so I don't have to wake up too early, and then until we get tired.
Right. And the company we're talking about, of course, is your company, Tilt 5.
Shameless plug.
Plug. What is
Tilt
that?
5.
That looks like a radio and a pair of sunglasses. What?
It's a barbecue lighter. Yeah.
Where's mine?
As some folks may know, I've been in the gaming space and the toy space for a long time. And a handful of years ago, I got the opportunity to work at a big video game company called Valve Software. And I was given the task by the founder of the company to come up with something that brings the whole family together to play games. That's been lost, you know.
Yeah,
right.
You know, we used to go to the arcades. We used to get together and do split screen games, you know, even board games, right?
Board games.
And so that was my task when I was there. And I put a team together. We explored everything: virtual reality, augmented reality. We hooked electrodes to people's brains to tried to read their emotional state and feed it back into games.
Oh, wow.
It was a really, crazy stuff we were doing there just to understand, how can we make games more appealing to the full family. And I actually developed a really cool optical technique for augmented reality there. So a lot of like VR just takes the light from a display and sticks it directly in your eye, which has severe limitations to it. And it was a pure accident. One day I was in the optics lab and I was working on a display that puts the images directly into your eye. But I put a beam splitter in backwards. Instead of the light going into my eye, it just projected out into the lab. And one of my colleagues was using this special material called a retroreflector to bounce lasers off of to do a tracking system. And like 20, 30 feet away, I saw this beautiful image just floating out in this retroreflector. And then I quickly flipped my beam splitter around. I'm like, that was weird. And then months and months later, it was almost like one of those things that, you're sitting on the toilet and it's like the eureka moment. I was at home and I'm like, I can't solve these freaking problems in AR. Like, it's all of our testing like shows that this is a great way to get everyone around the table playing games, but we can't have a $10,000 headset that weighs 10 pounds to do this. And I'm like, I'll just turn the optical problem inside out. And so went back and prototyped like a rollout game board you put on the table where just holograms pop out of it.
Right.
And it worked beautifully. Well, I'd been at Valve for some time, and the existential threat that Valve was under from Microsoft kind of abated. And so the pressure to do living room stuff was not as important. And they ended up just cutting half the team. And I went back to the founder of the company and bought this optical technique and used it to start a company. And that's a big, long story. But
that was Cast?
Cast AR, yeah. And that's a Silicon Valley story I won't bore you with. But, I learned everything not to do with venture capital and in a startup. But, go ahead.
I was going to say, but you'll tell that story on Friday morning of VCF.
Yes. If you want to hear that story, and that's a very juicy story, so you have to come to VCF.
Yes, entice you to come in. You have to wake up early too.
West, August 4th, 9:30. The doors open. Come see Jeri. She's kicking off the whole shebang. So
think they'll let me wear my skates? Probably not.
Totally.
I could see you going by the stage and just keep going. Yeah.
It could be a moving talk, we could follow you around. Anyway,
I highly recommend get on a plane, get in your car, get to VCF. The Computer History Museum is amazing. And then hop in your car and get over to our office too, if there's space. So we'll probably have little cards so that you can get the address, but it's well worth your time. I know people are used to just staying inside all the time after COVID, but this event, we've done a couple around the, West Coast, East Coast and in the South, but this is really the one that, has all the magic.
Well, look at the kind of people you meet there. If anybody recognizes, there's Jeri, and the guy in the middle is the only reason I have a career, I think. He did the 6502.
It's just an amazing thing. And these events too, like you can't really price the value of the people you'll meet and the friends you'll make and those connections. You just don't know where it's going to lead. And like now I met Bill through a Hackaday online event.
Right.
And they connected us. It wasn't Jasmine. It was Sophie Kravitz put us together. Remember that, Bill?
Yep.
And then Bill agreed to come to an event when I was working at Altium. And he spoke for us. And you guys have the Coriolis effect now because of that. You just don't know where things are going to go.
Right.
So,
it's so important. These type of events, I run into... Throughout my life, I ran into mentors, folks like Bill that, have wisdom and pass it along, going to these events, like the folks that were there, when it wasn't easy to do some of these things, have so much like wisdom they can pass on. And I've learned to appreciate that over time. Like I was just a young snot-nosed kid that like, oh, all that old stuff is not useful. But, as I've gotten older myself, I guess, and done a lot of various like engineering, every once in a while you have like a tough problem, and you're working with the young engineers and they're like, okay, we're going to throw a $3 microcontroller in to do this. And like, wait a minute, Bil Herd told me about a thing you could do by like winding a 5-cent transformer.
Right.
Oh, yeah. And it works better than like having a dumb microcontroller and having to, and it's more manufacturable or whatever. I'm just inventing something. But,
right. But yeah,
that's happened so many times in my career, thanks to going to events and absorbing this and becoming friends with some of these people. And, it's humbling too. Like we're losing some of these people too. You need to get out and see some of the people.
Like Chuck Peddle. Yeah.
It's, I talk about mentors a lot when people are like, oh, you're amazing, you're just such a genius. And it's like, no, it was the mentors. Like those two ham radio operators when I was a kid, snot-nosed kid. I probably didn't even think to thank them back then. But they pushed on me to do things and learn things, and they're all gone now. And really wish I could go back and say, like, thank you. Those seeds you planted allowed me to like make this amazing augmented reality gaming company that are delighting like thousands of people now. And you just don't know, like, how you can plant those seeds
where
and
it lands. Yeah,
that's right. Yeah.
So, Geek with Social Skills wants to know if you still build race cars.
I built a race car for a friend a handful of years ago. I guess it's probably going over 12 years ago. That was pretty fun getting back into it.
I remember you posting those pictures.
Yeah. Apparently it did quite well. I never made it out to a race to see because I ended up moving up to Seattle for Valve Software. But yeah, back in the day when I was a teenager, I was building my own chassis. Again, lots of mentors helping me. And it became quite accomplished in the I-5 challenge, which ran up and down the West Coast. And I was always innovating, making strange suspensions and candle mirrors.
I'd love to.
Tell them some of the things you did.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe some of that stuff will come up at 9:30.
Okay, I'll tell you. I'll throw out one tidbit because this impressed the hell out of me. Jeri was doing round track racing or whatever you call it, dirt racing, and put brake lights on her car that she could turn on, and the people right behind her would automatically back off.
Psychology.
They're hardwired.
So good.
So actually what I did is I didn't have a switch. I had a little pendulum inside of a little metal tube. And so when you go around the corner, it would like bounce. And they ended up banning it.
I love that.
So this came from a mentor. Again, mentors. So there was this gentleman in Florida that had written a book, and I was constantly calling him because he made the mistake of putting his phone number in the back of the book. And I'm pestering him like, I'm having this problem. I need to do this. And finally he's like, can you get to Florida? You can stay with my wife and me, and I will teach you everything you need to know about race cars. I think he just
that's right.
wanted to get it done, one and done.
Stop calling me. Just come over and spend a week, and we'll go through. I think
he was intrigued too. I mean, but I went out, and what was interesting, like the first few days, he basically taught me everything I needed to know about like the dynamics of race cars and the statics and all that stuff. And the last week we were just hanging out, and on the weekends we went to the racetrack and stuff. But he spent a lot of time talking about the psychology of racetracks, racing, your competitors. And that's where the brake light idea came in, because he's like, you need to get in the heads of the other people. So always think about the psychological advantage you had. And he gave me some tips, things like, during yellow flags, you're all out on the track together, and the flagger is like busy coordinating what's going on the front stretch. So you have a lot of time to like screw with people on the back stretch. And so he's like, bump the other cars, try to rattle the person in front of you, try to like, mentally set them up to think that you're going to pass them on, say, the bottom by like pulling alongside them on the bottom a bunch during the yellow flag when you can screw around a little bit. And then when the race starts, just pass them on the top side because you're programming them to think you're going to come on the bottom side. And the thing that I thought was really funny is especially about the bumping them, because in dirt racing, there's a lot of contact, and even under yellow flag conditions, because you're constantly kind of hitching back and forth, then you can bump people and make it look like an accident. Is if you can see their helmet doing this in the car as you're bumping them, you've rattled them, and they're going to be like extra aggressive. They're going to hit the gas too hard, and they're going to spin their back tires out, be ready to go underneath them at that point, because they're going to pitch the back of their car out. It worked like a charm. Anyway, I have 1,000 racing stories.
Cool. Matter of fact, let's see. Somebody was asking about this thing.
Oh, yeah.
I love that.
That was a fun project. So I don't know what possessed me to do this, but I wanted to make a bass guitar using the Commodore SID sound chip. And so I took a bass guitar first and hooked it up, made my own pickups out of piezo discs. So I cut them so that I could put them under the strings. And then I had an FPGA where I did a frequency count on each of the strings so I could get the note. That was quite a bit of work filtering it so that I could pick out, the note, not the overtone.
Wow.
And once I got that going, then I fed it into a SID from the FPGA so it would play notes. And then I hooked up the keyboard to the FPGA and did a keyboard scan so I could use the keys to tap out tones, as well as set different modes on it. So I could do square wave and set the ring oscillator and all kinds of fun stuff with it. It sounded really cool. There I was actually on skates at Maker Faire, skating around with a portable amplifier, playing Sunshine of Your Love or whatever it's called or something. The one song I can play on the bass. And that was fun. People really liked that a lot. And, I did a pretty good job. I spent some time really mounting the neck solid in there and extending wood down to the whatever they call it at the end. You can tell I'm not a musically inclined person. And it ended up getting stolen, unfortunately, which is sad. And we'd had an open house. So if you come to our open house, you steal something, we'll hunt you down.
Yes.
But
I'll be in on the hunt.
My previous startup, we had an open house and someone stole it, which was really sad. And people keep telling me I need to build another one, but I just decided like you had to be there, just had to be there. It's
very cool.
Can never recreate that again.
Maybe one day it'll find its hands. Like maybe someone will buy it from that black market and give it back to you.
That would be nice. If you have it and you're feeling guilty, I would love to have it back someday.
Yeah, we're going to sow the seeds for that now. People, if you're listening or ever see this, please return Jeri's bass.
So people like taking those photos and then photoshopping them. So every handful of years, I start getting like desperate messages like, oh, a demo coding group in Europe has your guitar. Like, get the pitchforks and torches.
Right.
And then people have like, whoa, it's just a Photoshop.
Well, now they're going to be generated. So, yeah. Actually, I'd like to ask your opinion. Did you ever look into generative, like, because you're also mechanically minded, AR, VR, electronics, you're very well-rounded as an engineer because you've taught yourself, basically, and you've had great mentors. Did you ever play with the generative, like, structural stuff? And I'm only curious because I was exposed to it through my time at Autodesk, but
no, can't say I know too much about it. Exciting field. I don't get to do, as CEO of Tilt 5, they call me the cash extraction officer. So as
totally.
As we started today, Bill's like, "Are you soldering?" I'm like, "Yeah." We had like, a mistake at the factory. We had 200 units they botched, and so the team only lets me take screws out and unsolder 2 wires. But yeah, I have to go out, like, promote and raise money in venture, in startups. You have to get a lot of venture capital. So that's primarily what I did, even though I designed a lot of it. I designed the circuit board in this. I designed all the optics in it, with
I remember you pouring your own lenses, didn't you?
I'm sorry, say it one more time.
Didn't you pour your own lenses? Didn't you mold them yourselves early on?
Not for this particular product. We had some other designs where I were milling freeform optics and then polishing them. So there's some other cool stuff you can do with freeform optics, but it's still a lot of years away.
I just remember you hand soldering flex connectors with those hard to solder, terminations and 30 leads. Yeah, you just went. Psh. I'd be like, they'd find me hanging from the rafters, if I had to hand solder those things.
Well, do I see a binocular microscope back there?
You do. That's my hidden thing. I would use my microscope too. I use my sun is what I really use to do the soldering.
Yeah, when I was in my 20s, I could do it with my naked eye, but now binocular microscope, they're only like a few $100s on Amazon. They're not like. They don't stay in focus as you zoom up and down like a Bosch $10,000 microscope. But I highly recommend it. Even if you're a hobbyist, get a binocular microscope. Like, even if your eyes are good, get one. Like, that's how I do all this really small soldering.
I've been trying to get by with USB microscopes, but it's just not the same.
Latency, you don't get the depth
of
field.
This is a
kind of headache
field. This is all the way down to here, whereas that scope there needs a stage to bring it up to so there's no depth of field, but great for real tight inspection.
Yeah.
But you get your hands under this and your hand stops shaking, or at least mine do.
You need one that goes right to the bench, right? So where's a good place to get those for cheap?
AM scope. That's where I get it.
Scope on Amazon. If you want to go super cheap, get an Alibaba and get one, but you're gonna have to wait like 2 months or something.
Well, I bought stuff like that in the past from university and other large institutional surplus.
Well, that's where you can get like the nice Bosch ones and stuff that are like you zoom up and down, they stay in focus and all the great virtues. But I'm not opposed to turning the focus knob as I zoom in and out.
I don't mind doing that. Yeah,
that's how we did it in the old days.
It's so funny around the lab here. Like, sometimes we get younger folks and they've heard the stories like, you got to get Metcals and stuff like that. And I'm like, no. A few years ago I ran into JBC and like those. You have to wait 5 seconds longer for the soldering iron to warm up. And then I found one even cheaper and just bought like them in bulk for the hardware lab here, the Jade soldering iron. And they're wonderful. Like,
they are so good now. Like, there's really no reason to, hate to say it. I think if you're doing really high-speed signal integrity, you still need to buy good quality, expensive instruments.
Yeah.
But if you're talking,
or rent them if you're a
even better.
Absolutely,
because I'd rather rent this, or in my case, I borrowed it to do some content for them. But yeah, some of these things are like a year's salary or more, so. That's why rentals exist for sure. Yeah. And then eBay older gear because it was well made. It will last. And I think an essential, I'm going off topic and getting distracted by my own brain here, but essential skill for engineers is being able to repair your own test equipment, right?
Totally agree. And
Hopes always used to come with their own schematic and everyone knew how to maintain it.
My pet peeve with fresh young engineers straight out of school is they think that they have to have, brand new tools, use the brand new chips, things like that. No, just like Bill's showing here, get the old iron off eBay that you can get for $100 and cost you $200 to ship.
Totally.
It's so funny. I was working at Valve Software, and we had unlimited budget there. And some of the engineers were getting their Keithley 10,000 digit voltmeters, Kelvin. It's like, and over, it's nice to have that stuff around when you need it. But I would have my Harbor Freight red, good within 20% voltmeter that turned on instantly. It's like, I'm doing something on USB. I want to see if there's 5 volts there. 4.95. It's probably 5 volts. And then I go over.
Go ahead.
No.
And then you got the in-betweens, your Brymans and stuff.
My secret weapon
really
was
solid.
2 at once. Having 4 leads that you can plug all at once. So.
No, I believe in, I've set up a lot of hardware labs over the years. I love sprinkling tools everywhere. So there's always a caliper within arm's reach. There's always the cheap voltmeter within arm's reach. There's always a soldering iron, solder wick, just cluttering up every desk.
That's why you're a CEO. Right? It's not just because you have brilliant ideas and you're determined to make something happen. It's like most people don't even think about that. They want to be really careful. So they think, what's the best thing we can have that's in our budget? And they're not even thinking about how many hours are wasted daily looking for something.
No, exactly. When I set up the Valve hardware lab, and I'm like, we need to have an inventory of components. So, we had unlimited budget to play with. So I got on DigiKey and just ordered everything. Jameco just ordered everything. They had these grab bags, and they had kits with big lever switches and stuff. And I just bought that stuff. I bought so much stuff. Jameco called me and what the hell is going on over there? What are you guys doing? And wait for Bill to get back because I think he'll appreciate this.
I had some Jameco kits I was looking for.
So
go ahead.
So all this stuff, bulk orders, just thousands of DigiKey boxes are showing up, and I got all of these really nice Vidmars off eBay. And some of my colleagues are like, "What the hell are you doing?" They're opening these boxes, and there's these big not blade switches, but big toggle switches that are good to 200 volts or something. And you wait, it's going to be 11 o'clock at night. You're going to need something, and we're going to have it in inventory, and it's going to save us days. And, not too long, months later, I walk over to his desk, and he had some part. He was mocking me for having some big switch or something because it was convenient. I'm like, look at that. Wasn't that convenient to be able to just go pull that?
Yeah.
And it didn't cost that much. And
time's money.
Right.
Yeah.
Here in Silicon Valley, I've worked at so many startups that are in the hardware space, and you go in and they don't even have a soldering iron. They're like, well, we'll just send it out to the board house to do the rework. I'm like, what are you talking about? That'll take 4 days.
In cost.
You just had some tools.
This is also why companies like Jeff, what's his name? Why am I spacing on it? But this is why companies. Yeah, I think so. They do the quick turn. Oh gosh, what is wrong? Oshpark just does the bare boards, but then there's Jeff McKelvey and his company, and they do the quick turn 3-day prototype service. There's a great market for it, and it's concentrated in Silicon Valley because time is money, and there's plenty of money there, but people don't want to do things themselves somehow. It's it's always seen as more efficient to send it out, which is kind of weird.
One of my constant battles too is don't try to design the entire product from the ground up and expect it to work the first time. Like, if you have a question about a circuit, just spin a board and get it in, or dead bug it, better yet, like spend 20 minutes and use the dip part.
Yeah.
Like, our office is full of tons of dip parts here. Yep. Like, a group of us just bought the entire dip selection out of Excess Solutions, which is a surplus store that went out of business. So, we have everything, and it's super handy. Like, we even have 4004 processors if so desired.
Wow.
I'm going to want. I'd love to see that part of Tilt Pot.
I'm sure you also have some 6500 series parts in there.
Oh yeah, you guys want a tour?
Yeah, absolutely.
There's a non-zero chance as I start walking around I may disappear because of whatever, but we'll try it. I'll give you a little taste. Cool. All right, so this is my office, and of course, lots of nerdy stuff, an SX64 back there. Lots of retro computers. There's my my mainframe beer cooler. So I took
That is so cool.
And I'm a big believer in you need to learn from, the past. So I like to put together displays in the office with products that were successful and products that weren't so successful on the market, and put them together so you can understand like why one was successful versus the other. There's some space junk up here, mainframe junk up here. Some Kim ones. A Jolt 6502. Thanks. One. Yeah. Some stuff that was very, I have emotional connection to. So TI 99, not the 99 4A.
Right. Yes.
Commodore, of course, some Amiga stuff. This is my cabinet of commercial failures. This is one of my favorite cabinets in here. What I think is cool about this, there's almost none of these products are a bad idea or technically bad. A lot of them are just bad timing or other factors like not marketed properly. So this is a really interesting cabinet with really cool stuff, which includes a couple things of mine in there as well. As a kid, I was very into gaming. So these little Game & Watches and Mattel LED games, loved those as a kid. Didn't get nearly as many as I wanted, but now there's eBay.
I remember being in the 3rd grade and kids trading those and lending them to each other because we couldn't all have the same one. And but they were so popular, the Game & Watches.
So I had this as a kid, and I cannot believe how emotional people get when they see the Little Professor learning calculator. So many folks come through our office and they get weak in the knees when they see that. It's really cool.
People are just listing the stuff they see in the background there. I've been putting it on the screen. They're going, oh, Coleco, oh,
yeah.
Little Professor, QCat.
Yeah, there's a lot in there. I need another cabinet because I have like piles of stuff I need to get organized. So, here's some other stuff. I'm trying to get this organized. So this top row is recording medium. So I've got some stuff fell over. The world's biggest cassette to the world's smallest cassette.
I love it.
Wire recording media, beta, stuff like that.
I remember you putting magnetic tape in a blender.
Yeah, try ferrofluid. I'm a nerd. So more stuff here. This is just my office. So let's venture into the space. Yeah. So this is not well put together yet, but this is, I'm going to build some shelving out here for toys, since I worked in the toy industry. This is a display that I'm excited about putting together. Bill, you might appreciate this because you probably picked some of these things up surplus when you were just getting started. But I love this because these are things like transistors and diodes that were so expensive and precious that they got their own retail box back in the day. And no one ever displays these. But, these days, you can buy, 100,000 diodes or transistors on a spool, and they're a fraction of a penny. You don't even think about it. But in the 60s, it cost as much as somebody's like weekly wage just to get one transistor. And it's emotional for me because I was just a kid going to Radio Shack and having trouble like even affording, transistors and things like that when they were
555s.
Yeah. So then each one of the rooms we dedicate to either eras or companies that we admire. So obviously Atari is really important to us here. So a lot of Atari artwork. But this is one of my favorite rooms when I'm giving tours to VIPs or investors is, here's a cabinet full of Atari. And then over here is a cabinet full of all the big mega corporations from the 70s that were trying to get into gaming and utterly failed. So you have RCA, you have Magnavox, you have Fairchild, you have Bally, Mattel,
I love it.
And it came down to like a couple guys in a crummy little building in Santa Clara figure out the magic sauce to make video games take off, while designed by committee billion-dollar equivalent companies, just can't get out of their way.
Right.
This is kind of our hangout space. There's video games and beanbags. Of course, it's Silicon Valley. You got to have beanbags. And, we frequently have meetups here. And
okay, cool.
We have a Sega room for folks that are into more 90s. Interesting stories around, all the Sega stuff. If you guys come out to our office to visit, we can, reminisce about how Sega had it all and then lost it all.
Right.
And then our boardroom, of course, is Nintendo. And so we've got this beautiful art, which is exploded views of the Nintendo consoles, as well as, some rare and not rare Nintendo items. So, the Virtual Boy and some other interesting artifacts there. And also we show off, the evolution of our product. This is very fascinating for the super nerdy folks. So from prototypes that I hand assembled all the optics myself and hand soldered everything to every dev kit to the final production, including our industrial design book that we wrote about the process.
Oh, wow.
That's fabulous.
And over here, this blank wall is going to be my wall of video game controllers, evolution of video game controllers. I think that's a very fascinating evolution that doesn't get talked about nearly enough. So this is the controller, for instance, for the Odyssey 1, the very first ever home game console. This thing's just absolutely wacky.
Right.
But what do you do when you're at the cutting edge of an emerging industry? You don't know what to do. You have to make some guesses, and sometimes they're weird. Here's our clean room, semi-clean room. Various machinery we developed to build our product.
Okay.
Oh, you wanted to see the chips. So we bought the entire store. So every corner around here is bins full of every component you could imagine.
DACO. Oh, you got DACO 8.
DACO 8, yeah.
And then it's, all the bins under here. Oh, we got an Amy in the clean room.
Hi, Amy.
Yeah, fun stuff.
What was she doing? Just sitting over there?
I know. I need to go talk to her. She's probably slacking.
She's in her natural habitat. What are you talking about? It's part of the museum, right?
Yeah. So, of course, I'm a pinball collector, so the office benefits from my obsessions. So we have.
I love it. The first two I see are Metallica and AC/DC. That's right up my alley.
So this one in particular, I loaned it to a programmer friend of mine, and he played a prank on me. He replaced all the music as a joke and put internet memes into it and called it Meme-talica. And I liked it so much, I left it. And
That's cool.
He's like, that's the limited collectible edition. You need to like set it back. I'm like, no, I love it so much, it's staying. So he's still horrified today.
Oh, you can always set it back if you want to.
Here's Bill would feel right at home in this debris here. This is one of the labs. Yeah. So these guys have a lot of fun in here. They have their science machine, which is a modular synth that just sits here and bleeps and bloops all day.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Well, that's how I got into electronics, was an interest in synths in the 70s.
It's not very bleepy bloopy today.
Well, it sounds like it's generating sounds for games, which is cool too.
Well, they tell me that they're always hard at work when the thing's running. So various offices down here where the programmer types like to turn all the lights off and hide. We held the Analog Aficionados dinner here a few months ago or a month ago, and there's still a bunch of like posters we put up of like chips that various chip designers that were coming, designed. That was a really fun event. So
I haven't seen a chip plot in years.
So there you go. There's the whirlwind tour. There's every corner of the place is full of interesting little artifacts. Oh, this one's fun. The Osborne. I make sure that every one of our folks on marketing hear the Osborne story, and that they know to never ever talk about our future plans, only about the current and most exciting version.
I met Lee Felstein at the C64 anniversary, and I didn't recognize him by sight, and he introduced himself, and then he said, I did the Osborne. I was like, oh, dude, I'm so sorry. Even though it's 20 years later, I'm like going, oh, I'm so sorry, dude.
Probably 40 years now.
Yeah.
Time goes. Yeah, I mean, it's so funny. I told our marketing folks about this, like, if you just start watching, you see companies shooting themselves in the foot all the time. And then just a matter of weeks, I was on a podcast with some like CEOs of various startups. And so I'm talking about like, till 5's out, you can get it. You can go to our website, it's $300 for, getting when you buy 3 kits. And now, you can do it. You can have fun now. And then the next guy that came up, he's like, we're about ready to release our first product. And then we have plans for our next one after that.
Right.
And he's talking about the next one after that. And in our internal chat, the marketing people were like, Osborne effect. Oh my God. What's he doing?
Yeah. There's literally thousands of years of documented human history saying, don't talk about the future.
Yeah. They ended up just tanking their sales because like, even though it was a long time for the next version to come out, like everyone's like, I might as well just wait.
Yeah. It's like, why?
Now you mentioned the programmers hiding. I was going to say, you can get those Bluetooth based collars for location.
Oh, well, we have the hardware team installed a CB radio between my office and the hardware lab. So maybe I should do the same to the software team.
Yeah.
Let's see if they're listening.
Random. Yeah.
Breaker, come in, hardware team. It's a pretty light day in here today. About 70% of our team are programmers working remote. So
Okay. And I used to have my CB repair endorsement back in the 70s, so that's pretty funny. It's I used to crawl into cars to do installs, and there'd be an inch of water on the floor, and you crawl out when you're done. The floor is dry. It's because your back is now soaking wet.
Nasty. I mean, as a kid, before cell phones were inexpensive, we all had CB radios out in rural Oregon. It was fun.
Yeah. Let's see.
It's a cool way to grow up.
Whoops. Oh,
yeah, they're already Osborne affecting me in the chat room. Nope. Nope, no plans for a future generation. You better buy the one right now.
Out of business right after this. It's
yeah. Turn the lights off.
So what's this picture?
I remember that. I think that might have been my first hack that I did on live stream. So when I was working at New Tech, it was not clear, like, what the heck you do on live stream, and YouTube really wasn't a thing. I think I got on YouTube the first year or something. And so we came up with this concept, we'll just build hacks and just go online on Sundays and show it off. So I built
that's Fat Man and Circuit Girl?
Yeah. So I ran into a gentleman, his nickname's the Fat Man. He's not fat, actually. He's quite skinny.
No, he isn't. Yeah.
He's a video game composer, and he makes fat sounds. But he's like, I'm interested in this live streaming stuff. Why don't we do something together? I'll be the idiot, and you go do some sciencey things and explain it to me. And it turned into quite a thing. We had lots of viewers, and it was fun. And I had, like the $20,000 TriCaster that I helped develop sitting there. So I had all this fancy gear so we could have like camera effects and stuff. But I built that. I think that may have been one of the first things I put together, which was a Nintendo emulator in a purse with a bunch of batteries and a display, and then Velcro on game controllers, so you could just pull them off and then play games together. They got a lot of attention. Like back in those days, I didn't understand much about viral, and that might have been one of the first viral things.
It's just so funny. I grew up without any kind of game controller, any kind of computer. We went outside and did hoops with sticks and, played on jungle gyms. I mean, I grew up playing in a river, right?
I did a lot of outside stuff too. As much as I was into my computers and electronics, I did get out and touch the grass. And then the neighbor up the road, who became maybe, one of my earliest mentors, he's a couple years older than me, was already in electronics a little bit more deeply than I was. And so we would do electronics together. But talking about rivers, we spent so much time, we would walk up the creeks. And then we would do a thing called Mud Town, which I have such fond memories. So he would like dig out reservoirs in the side of this hill and get like old terracotta pipes and stuff and run them underground. And then we'd build little cities with, G.I. Joe men. And
I did the same thing, only we used rain gutters. Yeah. And the culverts where the erosion sets in, you can make little caves and all kinds of.
Oh, yeah. We just had so much fun spending Saturdays and Sundays just like getting muddy from head to toe, like flooding villages below the mud town.
And that's without firecrackers.
Well, that came later. Yeah, you'd have to. Yeah, you'd build your earthen berm, and then you'd have to blow it out with the M80s to unleash the flood on the mud town.
So my one thing I blew up was I learned about potassium permanganate and glycerin, right?
Know it well.
And so I'm like, well, I want to like automate this somehow. So I took a little bag of glycerin, put it in the center of a toilet roll dispenser. It came in two parts. Opened it, full of glycerin, full of potassium permanganate, shove them together, throw it in the yard, blew a hole in the yard. So I get in trouble from my mother for that, right? Because you walk out and there's the hole and the smoke slowly wafting up. And then like 3 hours later, it's, Bill, where's the toilet paper dispenser? And I'm like, we've been through this, Mom. It's the hole in the yard.
Oh, that's awesome. Oh, I didn't get caught too much with my pyro activities. My brother, however, he was from a different marriage with my father, and he'd show up on the weekends and stuff. And he had his own, like, he was older and had his own social clique in town. And, so at one Sunday or something, we get this phone call. I'm at home, and my dad's like swearing up a storm. He's like, get in the car. And we drive into town, and my brother had like taken a bunch of like triple F gunpowder, stuck it in a mason jar with like an extension cord that they had like frayed the wires so it would spark.
Yeah. They send you away for that these days.
They took a post hole digger in his friend's backyard and dug this hole and then shoved this in there and packed dirt on it and then plugged it in and set it off, and they didn't realize it was going to blow a crater in the ground. And I got there very young. I didn't know what the heck was going on, except for there was like this crater, and like all the neighbors in the neighborhood are like standing around, and my brother has his head hung low. Like it blown all this dirt out, and all the rocks had like flown through and broke windows, and so maybe I can blame my brother on me kind of into the pyro thing.
Well, he did you a favor. He taught you one thing not to do.
Don't get caught.
So final question is, you were describing your brake light thing with the kind of almost a tilt indicator. Is that where you got this pervasive knowledge of how the tilt works in pinball machines? Because you should see Jeri play pinball. She kicks this machine and it won't tilt, but she'll slide it a good 5 inches.
Yeah. You get a feel for how the plumb bob works in those things, Yeah, they give you most pinball machines give you 3 tilts, so you can shove the thing through the back wall a couple times if you're not done playing yet. But you can also, depending on where the ball is, you can just start sliding the machine. That plumb bob's not going to really swing too much, and so. If the pinball operator hasn't tightened up all the plumb bobs, like, watch out. I will destroy those machines. The machines here, I make the plumb bob, like, really tight so that it
do you?
Keeps me honest.
And is a disadvantage for everybody else that doesn't understand plumb bobs.
No, but it means your practice is actually worthwhile, right? Because you can go
play some tournaments. Some cash tournaments for pinball. So I was pretty steeped in the competition side of things.
It could be another funding mechanism for Tilt 5, perhaps.
Just open the front doors and let people come put quarters in.
And
pinball's expensive these days. You go out into a bar, it's like $1 or $2 to play a game. It's like I have a hard time paying it. I love pinball. It's like one of the ultimate gaming, mechanisms, devices out there. Because the modern pinball machines, you get some video games, you get beautiful audio that's tied to events in the game, kinesthetics. It's a game of skill. Like, for those
it checks all the boxes.
Yeah.
So actually, I think I have video of you guys playing pinball. Do you mind if I?
Sure.
This is, which one is this? This is.
I think Usagi Electric was really hurt by my whooping him in pinball. He won't stop talking about it.
I think he was secretly thrilled.
Give me a second to put it up on the screen. Present.
I got into collecting pinball machines in the 90s. So in the 90s, no one wanted pinballs. They were just going into the landfill. People would take sledgehammers and crunch them up. And I had a chain of computer stores at the time. And I would just get pinball machines for almost free and stick them in the stores because I liked them. And then in the 2000s, I got pretty serious. And then eventually a friend of mine convinced me to put them on a route in bars in Portland. And then it was this feedback loop of I'd go open the machine up, there'd be like thousands of dollars in quarters. I'm like, woohoo, I'm going to like go buy another machine. And now I have over 80 machines.
Wow.
But when I moved to Seattle, I ended up pulling all the machines out of the bars, which was kind of sad. I was making a lot of money on pinball machines.
Well, and you created a shortage of pinball all by yourself.
Yeah. People were upset when I pulled the machines.
Oh, it's upside down. Oh, there's Jeri. Let's see. Can I rotate it? I doubt if I can. I didn't know how to use a phone as a camera, but that was Jeri. I had put dollar bills on the pinball machine.
It's called Tommy dollars, no sight, no hearing. You cover up parts of the glass. And whoever wins gets the dollars.
Right. And so then here's revenge.
Uh-oh.
Hang on window media player. All right, start again. Here we go.
Oh. I have this problem with David where, I'll win all night and I'll be like, it's time to go. All right, this one is for all the marbles.
Yes.
And that's when I choke every time. It's twice now. Like, a clean slate, and then the last game, I lose it. I think he's
a hustler, sort of, doesn't it?
He must be a hustler. He's. Yeah.
Is he coming out to?
No, I tried to get him. He spent all his VCF money.
I'm sure he trades for the Black Swan too.
Yeah, I'm sure once the big bills come out, he's all of a sudden gonna like snap to and suddenly get good at pinball.
Yeah, suddenly. Oh, I'm playing with the wrong hand. Yeah. So do I have to bring out an old C128 to you to put it in your collection? I didn't see any.
Do I have one? I have lots of 128s.
Oh, okay.
An LCD would go really nicely in the cabinet.
Wait a minute.
Now that's the rare one.
There's only 3 of those around, Jerry.
I don't care. I feel very fortunate. Someone gifted me a C65.
Like that thing, you mean? Oh, a C65?
Yeah, someone gifted me one a few years ago, and that's even like I don't even want it exposed to UV. I can't even bring myself to put it in a locked cabinet here at the office. Not that they're actually locked, but I mean,
right. You don't put it in the cabinet with the base C64. That's a shame.
So something really cool happened at VCF East. So we did our presentation, and this really nice gentleman came up with a chip tube, and he's like, I want to give this to you.
Doug Crawford. Yes.
Oh, good. I need to thank him.
Okay.
He's like, here is a 6501 processor. Wow. Uber rare. It's never been imaged before. It's not on the internet. He's like, I hope you can find someone that can get this image because you're into reverse engineering chips. I'm like, I know the right people. And so I was able to bring that back. And one of my colleagues was able to do a micrograph of it. And now it's online. First time people ever got to see the 6501. And
wow.
Eric Schlepper, who's going to be at VCF, I'm sure.
We were here. Yep. We were here with Eric maybe 4 weeks ago or 5, and we actually looked at that 6501.
Oh, wonderful! Well, then I'm just repeating the story you all know. I'm hoping that
was you who made the connection. That's what we want people to know.
Right.
I hope the Computer History Museum will take the chip. I've been trying to find a good home for it because, I joke about wanting these super obscure things, but some of these things should belong.
Right.
It does.
Eric
they should put it there with. They should put it there with a really high quality USB microscope and a display, so people can actually, and maybe some XY controls, so people can actually explore it live.
Or a Z control, so you can go down into it.
So at VCF South or South, I don't know, whatever, the one in Texas. I stumbled onto another super rare chip prototype. And so that's off being scanned right now. So I was talking to a gentleman there. Again, I'm so bad with names, I'm going to have to look him up and thank him. But this was for the Canon Pocketronic calculator. So it is the prototype Sea of Gates chips for it. And he said, I don't really know much about this, except for I have all this paperwork, which revolves around a lawsuit and these chips and these pieces. And so I'm like, I know the people who can scan these things and, get them saved for posterity. And I brought it back, and Al Caso, who is kind of famous guy in the Bay Area here, comes to our happy hours. He's like, oh, I think I know about this thing. And so he did a little searching around. Super rare, only 2 of these prototypes have ever been out in the world. And he's like, last one sold for $60,000. I'm like, Like, man, I got to get that one to a museum too. Like, they're all in private hands right now, and no one bothered to micrograph them.
Right.
So that's really cool. I love that we can get those someplace safe.
So I toured MOS about 6 years ago now, and actually found wafers in the basement. Threw it under the microscope, and it's the 80 column chip for the 128.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah. What's cool is you can see the dots on it for the bad ones. So it's already been tested.
Yep.
What was their yield like?
What
was their yield like?
Not good. Not good. It's the 8563, so not good. That's how I knew what the dots were, was when I saw so many of them. I knew they were failure dots, yeah. There's probably actually maybe 20 good die on here, maybe 25. So that's actually pretty good. This must be a late model one.
Bill, were you around? I have a friend that worked at AMI back in the good old days, probably around the same time of Moss and all that.
Okay.
He told me a really interesting story of like the 6 months the chip industry almost came to a screeching halt because to put those dots on there, they used to use Red Lake 43, which is a food dye that gave people cancer, and it got banned.
Oh, right.
And they're like, oh, no problem. We'll get like, Blue Lake 42 or something, but it wouldn't stick to the silicon. And they're like, okay, wow. We'll do green dye number 3. And like, I guess the whole industry for this like period of time, like people were trying to hoard Red Lake number whatever.
Wow.
Because it was the only like ink that would stick to it and run through their machines.
Did it have to be water soluble just for safety? I'm assuming you wouldn't want volatile chemicals in the dye area. I don't think.
I don't know the full details, but that makes sense. You probably don't want VOCs like
right attacking the
coating all the lenses of your stepper and stuff like that.
Yeah, very cool.
It's really cool the things that you run into. Like you'll probably, for folks that come out to VCF West, you're going to hear these stories. Like it's just amazing. You just talk to some unassuming guy, and they're like, "Oh yeah, the day that this happened almost ruined the entire industry." It's like, oh.
Yeah. Or I like.
People don't know how close humanity's become to destruction so many times.
Well, I like where like Al Alcorn will talk about designing the Pong and Pong game, and somebody said we need a sound, so he just takes a wire until he finds the boop noise already on the board.
The original chip tunes.
Yeah,
that's you have to respect the early designers. Like they had such limited things to work with, so you had to get really creative. I mean, Al comes out and visits every once in a while on our happy hours as well. And every time there's a new story. Last time I talked to him, he was like talking about the video modulator in Pong. And he's like, I couldn't afford to do a proper modulator. So what I did is a broadband noise generator, and it was cheaper to make really good filters to filter for channel 3 and 4, completely opposite of how you would design it today.
And that got through FCC, huh?
It makes sense. Like
if we were still competitors, I'd be making a phone call right now.
Well,
that's a common
actually,
synthesis, right?
Back in those days, like Pong, before all the extremes they went to, and like the Atari 400 and 800, you open those things up, they're like die-cast Sherman tanks inside, just probably to make it past FCC. I can't believe the money they dropped into just shielding inside
$10 or something. Yeah.
Wow. And here comes Commodore and just ate their lunch.
Oh, well, there's more too. Like we've talked about signal integrity in quite a few older shows around this topic. It's like the cost, even as late as 1986, for a 4-layer PCB was horrendous.
You couldn't afford it. No.
But you couldn't do it for consumer products. Like it was enough to have 2 layers, but then, so that means you got to shield the whole thing.
Jeri gave me crap one time. She held up one of these, and said, "Look at the size of this thing."
It's a full fucking panel.
No, it's 2 per panel exactly. This is, and so Eric Hartley talks about how how the IBM one was you could only get 1 per panel.
So you could just fit 2 of those on an standard 18 by 24, right?
Right. So if I made it an inch smaller, it's still 2 per panel. So it's as big as you can make it and still get 2 per panel.
So I have to ask, and you probably talked about this before, but for years I've always wondered, is the shield a ground return for the 2-layer board? And all the folks that are taking their shields off, are they compromising their designs or their systems?
They're only compromising RF emissions. And then, of course, it's the heat sink. So once you pull it off, maybe you should put some heat sinks back on.
Mm-hmm.
So that's...
Okay. Yeah, I always wondered.
The ground traces were the main return paths, right, Bill? So, but given that the shield was attached at probably 4 points, there was some other probably secondary loops, current loops, right?
Yeah, there's probably eddies and stuff in here, but I remember we sat down, we were doing the math of the holes and stuff, and I'm like, it's gotta be 5/8.
What were you gonna say, Jerry, there about?
Oh, I was just gonna pass on a more recent story about doing circuit boards. So I did the circuit board for our headset.
Okay.
Because we were just like a company trying to do it on $200,000. I wasn't going to hire anybody to do it. So not only as my promotional activities, I had to do every night until 3 a.m, laying out the circuit board. And so we had this part of the design came from Cast AR, which flush with money because we had these big fancy VCs, and of course they just outsourced everything, and of course the boards never worked right, and the audio howled at 60 or whatever 180 hertz, and from the
refresh
the currents and stuff.
Yeah.
So I'm doing the layout. I'm trying to actually do as good as I can, but I'm I need to do this low cost. The original design was on a 12-layer board. Not only is it heavy because you have all this copper in there, it's just expensive, all the layers. And there's blind and buried vias, which are expensive. I'm okay, I'm going to try to do this entire design on 6 layers. And we have these giant BGAs on there with straight through holes everywhere I can. No blind and buried vias anywhere. And so I pulled it off and worked fine. The audio doesn't howl at 180 hertz. And, I'm yeah, all right, I did it. And
I'll tell you what, that is an exact case study lifted from the books of the likes of Rick Hartley, who's I don't know if you know who Rick Hartley is, but he has a whole career of stories like that. Oh, these people, they did this, they had 18 layers and they were trying to length tune DDR2 to within, 1 mil, and they couldn't get it done. And I went in there and just redid the whole board on 4 layers, and it cost them a fraction of the cost.
Yeah. So when we went to our manufacturer, they looked at the density of the prototypes we brought in. They're like, oh, it's got to be a 12-layer. I'm oh no, it's 6-layer with straight through holes. And they're like, what? I mean, it was a brain fuck, though. I mean, just escape routing all these signals out of the BGA, plus considering all the ground returns. And, Bill, you sent me the Bible on layout early in my career, which thank you so much for, sending me $100 book when I was just a poor aspiring engineer.
Was that Howard Johnson's book?
I think so. The beige one. I haven't looked at it in a few years.
Yeah, probably.
Howard Johnson.
Black Art of High-Speed Layout or something.
That's the one.
Handbook of Black Magic. That was my bathroom reading, I think. I just read that thing cover to cover 1,000 times. And, every once in a while you can pull a rabbit out of the hat like that. And it's just, it cut a ton of money. It increased yield. It also helped us as a small startup walking into a manufacturer with no credibility of mic drop. Here's something, with proper DFM on it. We're a team of, experienced folks, not a typical
if you ever want a ghostwriter to work with you on writing you could turn that into a textbook and it would sell as a case study. But anyway,
we'll have to find a snappy title, like "Don't be an asshole, do it right" or something. Hopefully, is it okay? I'm swearing.
Well, it comes down to the practical financial aspect
I'm not
of it.
monetized.
You saved a ton of money, and you could, if people can learn from what you did, just because you were diligent and did it the right way, and you could actually give real hard numbers to people how much they could save in the process.
And it's not because I'm like super skilled or anything like that. I worked in the toy industry, and they would put constraints on you that were unreasonable, and you had to make it work, which was super fun. Like, you have 1 year to go from concept to prototype so they can sell it at Toy Fair to full production by July. And you have to hit, a COGS that is better than their budget that they gave you. Right. And so it came down to like lots of wacky things, like the Commodore 64 joystick. Some people give me grief because there's like problems on the board and stuff like that. It's like, well, they didn't even use my reference design. Right. They cost reduced it themselves. And like, they did crazy things like, it's a joystick with 2 buttons at the top edge of it. It's a 2-layer board. I got it into 2 layers, and the 2 layers extended up to the 2 buttons, but that was too costly for them to have that extra circuit board up there. Maybe how it was panelized or what. Right. So they actually relayed out the board by hand themselves, and then they cut the top off where the buttons were, and they use a one-sided phenolic board where the buttons go, and have someone hand solder like 4 little or 3 little wires up there.
That's it. Consumer is incredible. The cost cutting measures. There's whole. We got to tour some factories in China when Altium had its headquarters there for a short time. Boy, that was a fiasco. And the guy I was reporting to at the time had all sorts of really cool stories about touring. I went to one of the factories, but they would redesign an entire power supply just to move an M3 bolt an inch over so that during assembly they didn't have to tilt a screwdriver.
Yeah, I've seen it. I have a power supply story, same project, the Commodore joystick. So I put a, 5-cent LDO regulator in, like, great, low noise, fits within our power envelope, efficient. No, way too expensive for a dime or whatever it costs. Like, so they had to put a switch on the front panel of this thing and an LED. So what do? Like, hey, well, we have a voltage reference with that red LED up there. Let's just throw some floor sweepings, bipolar transistors in there and use that LED through a little jumper wire as our voltage reference. And I'm like, oh my God, could this actually work? What happens if the sun shines on that LED?
It's not a reference, but yeah.
So yeah,
they're not too bad. They're not as good as a Xena, but it'll be within 10%. It'll be within 10% though.
Yeah, so it's like I put a flashlight on the LED and it's like, yep, there goes the power supply. I don't know which way it
went. Well, tell me, how much did it change by? I'm really curious about that.
It's been too many years. It's been like 15 or 20 years.
Changes, yeah.
It could easily be 10 or more percent, I suppose. Yeah.
But, the toy industry works under different conditions, though. Like, they're a one and done sales cycle. Like, it just has to work long enough for the first use. A lot of these things, like, I think we sold close to 1 million of these joysticks over the life of the thing. And I would assume that 99% of these things got played once, people had their dopamine hit, and then it went on a shelf. And so they think about that a lot, as like, how, what's the lifespan of this toy? And
at Commodore, we treated them like toys, which pisses people off these days. They're like, it's a computer. I'm like, we designed it to last 3 years.
That's why they're special now. That's why there's museum cabinets for them now, because you did make 24 million in the case of the 128, you made 6.5 million, and that was it. It's like,
well, I would argue that, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I've thought about this a lot because I'd like to draw parallels of early home computers to early, AR, XR experiences. We're at the same phase. Like no one knows what the fuck the product needs to look like.
Right.
And that's why we went closer to a toy. So it's like it's made out of plastic. So like you can smash it into the table. It doesn't break. It doesn't have exotic materials in it. It's assembled.
Have to do that with family games because people are going to get pissed when they lose.
Yeah. And some of our folks on the leadership team get like frustrated that I'm like, yeah, probably 99% of these are just going on a shelf and people had a good time once with it or a few times. And I think this is a question for you, Bill. And this is my assumption. I suspect most of these early home computers, like the Commodore, people got them. They used them a few times. They kind of bought into the dream that they would amortize their home mortgage and they would write letters on it.
Recipes, yeah.
They dedicated a room to it, and it sat there for 6 months, barely used, and then went in the closet, which is okay. It was like an entry. And then there was nerds like me that really didn't care that I had to type all these weird, obscure load commands to make things happen.
Or try and type them out of a magazine. I was going to say, you could tell the serious people, Commodore users, is they went and got a disk drive, which cost as much as the computer. But then once somebody got a disk drive, then they actually were pretty active because the games were cool. I mean, Jumpman, Kennedy Approach, they were great games, I thought.
At Till 5, that's why we focus so much on games. Like if we really are paralleling, where home computers were in the early 80s, people are going to get it and they're going to dream about doing productivity. And some people will do that.
Right.
But, kids are going to play games on it, and adults that act like kids are going to play games on it.
Right.
And 30 years from now, we're going to look back and be like, oh, how quaint things were back then and how primitive. Now that we have the wonder glasses that just magically do everything and read our minds, and why did we think that a barbecue lighter input device it made sense?
It's actually just really cool though. It's out of the box thinking.
If you haven't got a chance to try it, you got to try it. So if you guys come out to the office after
VCF, I will be next weekend. I'm looking forward to it.
We're all about group gaming, so we're just putting all our effort into it, just seamless, just jump in and play together, because how do you play games in the living room anymore? You really don't. There's very few options to play an interactive game together.
So,
I'm sorry, I'm back on being CEO again. We can talk about that.
It's okay. It's okay. What you're doing is really, like you said it a moment ago, you're at the beginning of, you're getting in on the ground floor in this whole new thing. And, 20 years from now, there's going to be a podcast with people saying, I remember the Tilt 5. I had one of them. I'm trying to get I picked this up and I'm trying to restore it. This is how I got my start. It's going to be similar.
I think a lot back about companies like Commodore. They had it all, and
we did
squandered
we screwed it up.
It happens all the time. It's so funny. It's I mean,
breaks my heart.
It really does. I consider this, and I think this as someone in. I'm currently just a contractor, but as someone who is intentionally trying to get better at business, I'm thinking one of the ways I intend to leverage AI, because it's here now, there's no way not to use it, or you just get left behind.
Because everybody else is using it, right?
To solve that exact problem, to tell me when I'm being a fool and I'm stuck in my old way of thinking and I have to adapt, but I can't seem to.
I use AI so much right now. So I like programming with our system. I love it. It's super fun. It's this rich palette where you can do things that you just can't do on a flat screen. And it's just fun to explore. So my weekends are I'm programming in Unity and Unreal for it. And I used
by the way, can anyone get access or subscribe to an API or SDK
It's all free. It's kind of like a Commodore, right? You just get it, and it's all right in the driver install. We didn't want to block anybody because we understand it's like the early days of home computers. Like, some kid is probably going to be in a garage somewhere and figure out, like, oh, if I put the magic wand in my ear, like, that's the funnest game mechanic, something that we can't even imagine. And it's going to blow up and change the industry. And if we try to, like, you know,
I can imagine it going in unsavory directions too, but let's leave that behind.
Engineered the tip of it.
But since ChatGPT 4 came out, I heard that you could use. I heard that it could be good for writing little snippets of code, and I've always been frustrated using Unity because you go to Google and you're like, oh, I just want like something simple, like 2 game objects to always look at each other, and you get onto Stack Overflow, and there's like 50 people grandstanding, like, well, technically the proper way to do it is this, and it's like you
spend is what matters.
and you spend an hour trying to find your answer. ChatGPT, if you slice it down to a very simple question, it's like, I want 2 game objects to always look at each other no matter where they move. It gets it perfect 100% of the time. Yeah. And, you know, maybe it's not the most elegant. My co-founder, who is a serious programmer, I do things with wires, right?
Right. You know, and go-tos.
But thanks to ChatGPT, I've like created a bunch of things that have actually turned into shipping products. Usually what happens is I go into, you know, this over the weekend, I come back and they're like, hey guys, I did a thing and it's kind of fun. And they're like, oh God. And then they try it and they're like, oh shit, this is actually good. And then they go clean it all up and push it out. I wanted to bring this out. I think this is important. This is, you know, why do companies like squander what they had?
Oh, is that the frickin' Radio Shack LCD?
I'm sorry. Is this a touchy subject, Bill?
It's a very, very, very touchy subject. Yes.
This is almost as touchy as
because the
Apple
president of Tandy told our president there's no money in mobile computers. Well, yeah, Jerry, it's like you getting in the heads of the other people driving. It's like if you could say there's no advantage to being at the finish line first, you know? So, yeah, that's a tough.
Oh.
First, I'll show this off. It's
a piece of shit.
Oh, come on, Bill.
Bill.
That would great.
Send me that. Send me one of those LCDs, and I'll judge for myself.
I want a case of.
We could actually do a great comparison.
A bunch of VR headsets, and we'll talk.
All right. So I think you'll appreciate this.
How could that compete with this? I mean, it's got the little screen. It was twice the resolution, and the keys are full travel. Oh, just go ahead, show yours too.
All right. So this one was smashed.
Oh, that's actually a good looking display for the era.
Oh no, this is not the original display.
That makes sense because the original display looked like poop.
This is a full Windows PC, and I made a keyboard decoder that takes USB to Tandy keyboard, and I have a really cool project that it might be done by VCF. So I'm taking a koala pad and putting a Bluetooth touchpad in it for the input for this thing.
Okay. Cool.
And so this is
Hang on, let me make it big. Hold on a second. Whoop, there you go. Oh, that does look cool. Okay, I don't hate Tandys that have been retrofitted near as much. Oh so man, that guy from Tandy, he screwed us royal. Oh my God. And Marshall Smith. Oh.
Yeah, I've heard this story. Yeah, that is really tragic, especially since Commodore had their own display capabilities at the time, vertically integrated.
Yeah.
So here, this is what I'm gonna hypothesize with this. This is the 1983 Tandy Corporation annual report. And, being a big fancy CEO these days, I love these kinds of things. So this was kind of beautiful. I dream of the day that I can do something cool like this for my annual report.
Right.
But I just want to turn to one picture here and just propose a question. So this guy here, he looks like, the suit. He's probably the CEO or something. Do you think he actually gave a crap about computers and knew anything about them?
Oh yeah, look at the way he's like, yeah, the product's sitting next to me, whatever it is.
I suspect he couldn't even find the power button on the thing. So
Jack Trammell's been accused of that as well. But the thing about Jack was he knew what people wanted and he knew how to sell to it. So, in my humble opinion,
so maybe a predecessor to Steve Jobs. That.
I think Jack. I have opinions. We'll talk of VCF.
yeah. Let's debate that one. I'm not a Jobs fangirl, but there are some traits of these sociopathic. I don't know. Didn't know.
Not that it's anything wrong.
We're not judging you, Jeri. It's your opinion, and that's
stories are there might have been similar traits between these two.
Yes.
There often is with people who turn out to be really good at growing a company rapidly, using in partnership with someone who's technically a genius but hasn't got a harmful bone in their body. Mm-hmm. I've never met him personally, but reading his biography, and I've seen him speak at several conferences and things. He seems like a genuine, lovely person.
Yeah, I've had the opportunity to hang out with Woz quite a few times. He's pretty genuine guy, pretty nice guy. Yeah, I mean, it's working in the toy industry, many of the toy executives, I would say, were kind of the Jobs, Tramiel, kind of like, we're here to make money and we need to understand our audience precisely so we can extract maximum money from these people. And I think that works too. Like, even if maybe they can't relate to it, if they can surround themselves with people that go and figure out the, user experience. But then you end up with assumption, and maybe Bill, more, is the leadership that came into Commodore after Tramiel just seemed like they were there to milk the cash as long as they could.
I just feel like those people were vultures. They were the vultures circling, and they're like, let's eat the carrion, But,
what do we care if it goes out of business in a handful of years? And you see it all the time, I
have to say there are some really good CEOs out there too, and I again don't know him personally, but people like Jeff Hoffman, I don't know if you know who that is, but he founded, but they're not in our industry, right? Maybe it's just our industry that's got wacky people. Jeff Hoffman founded Priceline, started out as a software developer, hated life, quit.
He was a programmer, so what? Yeah,
he was a programmer. He quit, but he went to talk to a mentor, and he got stuck in a queue at the airport to the ticket counter and missed his flight because he couldn't even get to the counter to check in. And he's like, I can solve this problem. He went and spoke to everyone in the line. Look, if you just paid like $10 or $15 extra for a ticket, but not have to wait in this queue. And everyone was like, of course. So he went and invented the check-in kiosk. And he built sold that company for millions, and then wondered, why am I rich? I don't know what to do.
And he still misses his flights, but yeah.
And he was watching the news in his local area, and there was a safe house for women who'd been abused, and some of them had children, and they were getting evicted because they couldn't make the payments on the house. So the next day he went and withdrew a bunch of cash and went and bought it for them.
Oh, wow.
And so it's like, I hear stories. There
are really great CEOs out there. Now that I have to learn how to be a CEO, I listen to all of the case studies and the books around like Good to Great and stuff like that. And Yeah, there's certainly folks that can have short-term success by being horrible people, but there's, companies out there that last a long time because they're genuinely great people.
Yeah.
Hewlett and
I
Packard.
think you'll get there. You've got the
I hope so.
history.
It's a touchy subject for me because it's been such an upward slog with Tilt 5. At my previous startup, we got an investor that just dumped a ton of money onto us and then just stuck a bunch of executives in the company who just blew through it all. And my co-founder and I are like, we want to do it right this time. But, in the world of Silicon Valley, you don't get rewarded for having,
good
practical, ethical business practices. You get benefit. The benefit to the venture capitalists, like, how fast can you unicorn this thing so we can fluff and dump you to? So every dollar that I brought in, like, I pulled in like a fraction of a percent compared to some of these, like, FTX founders that, it's like
Theranos.
Theranos, the sociopaths that go out there and just like lie through all sides of their mouth. Anyway, I'll stop bitching about my woes.
No, I think
buy a system that would help me. Just buy a system, have fun with it.
Buy a system from Jeri.
You'll hit the tipping point. It will hit the tipping point once regular families in different parts of the country or wherever.
We're starting to get the content for that actually makes sense. So we have Settlers of Catan coming out in a few weeks. So if you just like regular old board games, we have a bunch of co-op like shooters and strategy games, and a bunch of that's in the pipeline. So we're finally at that stage where the content is coming in that justifies. I mean, I heard stories about Commodore, right?
The content's everything, and Jack Tramiel knew it. He didn't want to make money on the computers, right? The computer's free. It's the software that matters.
Mm-hmm. And Commodore seeded a bunch of that early stuff. It wasn't the world's most amazing.
We made programming shops make stuff for us. Yeah, we went out and subsidized.
The things that surprise me the most about our business is the unexpected fun things that just surface for no reason. Like a programmer did a thing over a weekend, sent it to us like, hey, this is kind of a cool little game. And then we took a look at it. It's like, oh, it's okay. It's a single player. And we were like, hey, just send it to us. Right. And we're going to make it 5 players or 4 players. And then all of a sudden it's like our addiction, and it's our customers' addiction. It's like, but it was like super straightforward. As I think back to like Commodore, some of the things that I loved is like lemonade stand. Like, it's like, it was probably written in BASIC.
I tried to find a picture of you with Woz and I couldn't, but I did find this one.
Back in my roller derby days. Wow, risque. I have a funny Woz story. Let me pull something out of my wallet. If I can find it. Hopefully it's still in here. So Woz likes to have little gimmicky things that he gives out. Like, one thing he does is he goes to the what do they call it? Where they print money. He
did the $2 bills on a sheet or something like that.
Yeah. And this is kind of cool. So he takes like big sheets of money. You can buy uncut money from the Treasury. And then he takes it to a print shop that can do that can cut it and perforate it with the little holes, and then can like laminate it together down the side like one of those rip-off sheets that you can just pull it off. And he walks around with a pad of 3 $2 bills in a row, and he's like, "Oh, I want to go to the movies. Okay," whoosh, 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 and hands it. And he's actually had like the police called on him because people think it's fake. And he has these funny things that he says about it, and like the way they print the serial numbers on money is, you think it's like, it is serialized, right? Sequential, but it's not the last and the first numbers. It's some numbers in the middle that change. So people like question him like, this is fake. And he's like, you can tell it's not fake because the serial numbers on each of the bills are different. And of course they look down the edge and they're all like the same number.
Right.
So my Woz story is he likes to give out his business card. I should cover up the phone number. I'm sure it's a prank line. If you actually here, I'll pull it back out.
Probably, but we don't need to be the source.
So he likes to. This is like a laser cut business card. This is quite old. It's probably he has some other gag now, but this was quite novel to get laser cut business cards like 15 years ago.
Right.
And so he gave me one, and so I put it in my wallet. Haha, that's fun. And I picked up a pinball machine off Craigslist, and I drive out in the middle of nowhere to pick up this pinball machine. I'm talking to the gentleman that's selling it to me, and he had other machines there. And I'm like, oh, are any of these other machines for sale? And he's like, yeah, these are for sale. So we're negotiating on like the other machines. And he's like, so you're from Silicon Valley. I'm like, yeah. And he's like, have you ever met Woz? And I'm like, oh, yeah, I've met him quite a few times. We hang out occasionally. And he's like, bullshit. And like, pull out the metal business card. And he's like, I'll knock $200 off that machine if you give me that business card. I'm like, deal.
Oh, wow.
And so when I got back home, I wrote to Woz. I'm like, Woz, you're going to be really mad at me. And if you get a funny phone call, like, this is why. And he wrote back and he's like, no problem. I would have done the same thing. And then he gave me another business card. So he never learns.
Right.
No, he's just nice.
So guess what time it is? We have been talking for 1 hour and 45 minutes.
Have I set a record yet?
Yes.
I think this is our longest cast as yet. Yep.
Yeah.
And I have a couple records out there. I think I went 3 hours with EV blog.
Well, you and me went a long time with Pedal.
You know what?
Was a long one.
If you ever talk to Dave again, just give him a little bit of a dig and a hard time that he didn't come out to VCF West. I nearly had him on the hook to
come. Really? I didn't know he was a retro aficionado.
He's just a straight up EE and very enthusiastic. But he does have some retro gear and does mess around with a bit. He's probably got some quite obscure things that are unique to Australia and New Zealand, actually. It would be great to get him as a speaker sometime. We'll figure it out.
I think I've only met him once in person. I think he came out for Embedded Systems Conference or something. He doesn't get over here too often. And
yeah. He'd rather go out bush. He's very fit and loves to explore and hike and do canyoning. Very, very fit guy.
In a land where everything wants to hurt you.
He also agreed to get on our show, and we haven't had him yet because when we start here at 11 a.m., it's 4 a.m. in Sydney, so it's not very conducive. We'll do a special time for him sometime.
Yeah.
It is winter there right now. That's right. He's probably out snowboarding.
I bet you could come up with some questions to really get him off the rails, and he's opinionated, so you could probably turn that.
We love talking with him. When he and I both worked together at Altium for a short time in Sydney, and we would have the coolest conversations. We sometimes had the heated conversations about.
Is this Berrigan you're talking about?
I'm talking about Dave Jones.
Dave Jones, okay.
EEV blog. So
love him or hate him. Like it seems in the
it's impossible
around here. People either love him or hate him.
I don't know anyone who actually hates him.
I don't either.
Everyone who knows him, it's
hear that.
His endearing qualities, actually.
Yeah.
So quite a few years ago, now you just took me back to a really fun thing that Chris Gamble and Dave and I did. We did the 555 timer contest, which Altium sponsored us. It just blew up into like something we never expected. It's like, let's just do this thing. Like, 555 was turning 40 years old or something, like, and it's still useful in systems today. They have awesome versions of it.
Right.
And people crap on it as not being useful in production gear.
That just means they don't know about it.
Yeah.
They don't know how to use it. It could take over most $10 microcontrollers in most industrial devices.
Yeah, here's.
I'm probably being a bit out there saying that, but.
So here's an interesting story. A project that I did. It's been quite a few years. So there's a company called Kerner Works, which is the predecessor of. Oh my goodness, it's still up. The 555 contest.
Yeah. Look how young Chris is there. Look how young you are there.
I know, and 10 pounds or 15 pounds lighter. I need to. Oh, anyway. I hate looking at my older pictures, but that's the world
I got one for you. Keep talking. I'll find this.
Okay. Where was I going? Kerner Works. So Kerner Works was old ILM. So ILM did the practical effects for movies, like physical,
right?
Props and stuff like that. Well, anyway, CGI came along and just kind of ate their business, and they got spun out and turned into a thing called Kerner Works. And they were making their living by doing projects for like military and stuff like that. And they had made an amputation training dummy for military and medical personnel to do stuff. I don't know. But these things are full size like dummies, and they would ship them around in airplanes in a thing that was like a big crate, like a coffin. But they were having trouble with their circuitry. When the batteries got low, the thing would spontaneously turn on, and it's got motors, and it's got like an MP3 sound playback
like
chip. It's like groaning. And so Grant Imahara knew these guys, and he's like, "You're what we call an ace." And so I'm going to introduce you to them as the ace that's going to solve their problem. And so they needed someone to come in and fix this design so it didn't spontaneously turn on. I ended up using the CMOS version of the 555 timer to control turning this thing on and off. But what was amazing, and I really wish that I had the circuit board that I made for this, because I mostly lifted their design and put it back down, and then just added my little power management circuit to it.
Right.
And but it had the most amazing silk screen on it, because it had these motor drivers for like arms, legs, eyes, neck, and it just made the thing thrash around. But it had a penis connection to it. And so I'm working with them. I'm like, what in the world is going on with the connection for a penis?
It's a priapism simulator.
Oh, Bill, you've even got the right word for it.
I'm an EMT,
They were saying
like a buildup of blood nitrogen in a I don't want to say cadaver, because it's not a cadaver. It's a dummy. Yeah, they have nitrogen in the dummy.
So apparently, like if a limb gets cut off, like the blood goes to the center of your body, and men will get an erection. And this is crucial for emergency personnel to be prepared for this to happen. And so I so wish I had that board. So wish I had it. Jeri, but I used the 555.
I'm going to tell you an EMT story when we're together via VCF West, which is next week, everybody. But I'm not going to tell you it over the air.
You have to come to VCF West August 4th and 5th, next weekend, right? Next
Friday and Saturday.
And then Sunday, hang out at Till 5.
Yeah.
Till 5, beer and pizza. We'll buy that part of it. You bring the nerdiness.
So I did find a young picture of you. You know this one.
Oh, yeah. This is a fun one.
Yeah.
I was probably in my 20s.
Okay.
Yeah. Was I in my 20s when I did the C1? I did the C1. It was a reconfigurable computer. It had a couple FPGAs and could emulate the Commodore 64. And I was manufacturing it in Germany in partnership with Jens Schoenfeld from Individual Computers. And so I was over there doing that build, and some really sweet groups, folks from Netherlands Commodore user group signed a Commodore and gave it to me. It's the one in the cabinet over here.
Oh, wow.
That's
amazing. It was really nice of them.
Very cool. So
somewhere out online is like a picture of me in my, computer store. I look even younger. I'm like,
oh, really? I haven't seen the computer store one.
Yeah. And there's some out there of me way back with the race cars too. I was pretty buff back then. This, when you're slinging tires around all day,
Right,
at the racetrack, you get kind of strong.
And probably actually driving like that, you're using your core the whole time, right?
There's no power steering. So during the week I would, lift weights. Because you got to have a direct connection to the wheels, because there's there's a lot of feel that comes through
feedback,
through the rack and pinion, and so you can feel the moment the tires are slipping when you're scrubbing the tires.
Right.
It's really cool. Oh, my heart's pounding now. I'm thinking about racing.
Maybe that's the outlet still in your future.
Oh, now I know how to get Jeri excited. Just take her back to her racing days.
Let's go karting together sometime.
Well, we're talking about it at VCF West.
No. We can't do it at VCF this time. We got to do it when Dave from Usagi.
I know.
Yeah, we got to have that competitive edge, element has to be there.
Yeah. There was a side email thread going, he was lamenting the pinball stuff and the thrashing that he took on VCF East Coast. And he said some snarky thing.
He did, yes.
Yeah, if it was racing, racing.
Oh,
and someone chimed in you need to look up Jeri's background. And of course, I got in there let's do that. You want to put some money on it? Talking about Grant Imahara,
right?
Really cool guy. So we went to a local indoor, pretty powerful gas-powered.
I've seen pictures of that. You and Grant, yeah.
Yeah, and so we go there, and he had filmed a MythBusters there, and he was kind of being cocky, I might actually get a chance to beat you on this. I'm like, oh, don't be so sure of that. And so we go in there, and of course, the kids that are the flaggers and stuff, the safety monitors and stuff are like, oh, Grant Imahara, oh my god, oh. And so we go out and we race, and I beat him, of course. And then at the end, all the kids rush up there, you beat Grant, and he's like, she was a professional race car driver. Of course she's going to be blustering and stuff.
Wow. That was awesome.
She's a professional computer designer. Of course, her computer works.
Yeah, it's sad that we lost him. He was a good guy.
I was gonna say,
he had some good stories. Someday, hopefully they come out, because he told me things that MythBusters, there were some gnarly stuff, and some stuff that they just couldn't air the shows because it was this is a blueprint for terrorism. And
right.
Wow. Yeah. One of the favorite shows they ever did for me along those lines was all about thermite. So I'm like, I've got to play with thermite one of these days.
I have.
She has. It cost her a fingernail.
I don't want to be on the CIA or FBI watch list because I'm ordering powdered aluminium and iron oxide, ferric oxide.
Ship it to your client's facility. That's my trick for getting chemicals.
Right.
And then swing.
Just have a friend's address I can borrow.
Yeah, Woz.
They can trace the finance, who paid for this. It all comes back to me in the end.
Just use Woz's business card when you order it.
Yeah, I'm sure he's on plenty of lists. I went out to.
A great way to weld. You're right, Chris. I see Chris's comment. It is used for welding. I could just tell them I'm trying to build a railroad in my backyard.
Exactly.
Right.
First time I met Woz, it was pretty fun. So I'm super excited. I'm super young and my first time I get to meet Woz, and I'm shaking. And at that time, I guess he was very particular about where he ate. And apparently he's gotten better from what people tell me. And he wanted to go to this particular restaurant, and someone's like, oh, that's because he just will only eat there and one other place. And so I show up there, he shows up and he brings in this big duffel bag with him. And he's like, I've heard about you, Jeri, and, you know, I brought a few things I want to show you. And so we're bonding and having a good time talking about things. Then he pulls out this like 1 or 2 watt blue laser. And he's like, have you ever seen a blue 2 watt laser? And I'm like, no, that's effing dangerous. Like, where did you get that? And he's like, I imported it from wherever.
Pakistan.
And so there were some balloons in this restaurant, and he takes this thing and carefully aims. He's like, pop, pop, pop. And then he opens up the salt and the pepper shaker, and he's like taking this thing right in the middle of the table, like blasting this 2 watt laser down, and it's like a little sparkler coming out of the pepper shaker. And he's like, hold on, I got to do a podcast. And so, you know, he has like this, you know, I hadn't seen any of these hot spots for phones at the time. He pulls out a hotspot, and then he gets one of those big globe, you know, microphones. And he pulls out his MacBook and does a podcast in front of me. He's like, okay, thanks for like sitting through that. He's a trip.
So very cool.
Awesome. Fun.
Yeah, my Woz story is not near as fun. So very cool. All right. Oh, hey, wait a minute. Usagi Electric. Hold on a second. You got a second more to like banter with Usagi?
Did he jump on?
Oh, we have an all hands meeting now. I gotta go. I have 1 second. Are you gonna bring him on?
It won't be that quick, so we gotta split then. So.
That's okay.
No, it's all right. Our all hands, they're gonna just be doing the financial reports. So okay. I know. We need to sell more units. So
so hang on.
Get him on here. Like trying. We're gonna have a smackdown.
Yeah. So here,
this is gonna be like WWF right here. The taunting.
He doesn't stand a chance.
Well, he seemed pretty confident. I mean, given he hadn't, researched or anything.
Yeah.
Well, I told him about the brake light trick, and he's like, psh, not a problem. He's saying,
what about the traction control system I built? I actually found that prototype the other day. I need to get that to the office. It like shows how naive I was in my teens. It had a 6502 processor, a ROM and a RAM, and an I/O interface that I made out of some TTL parts to do the whole traction control. One big bulk decoupling capacitor. That's it. And it was all wire wrapped. The thing ran. It probably reset multiple times during the race, but it just recovered so fast.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So, Usagi says he'll be here in 2 minutes. So
all right. I mean, chop, man. Like you're racing.
I'll tell him faster. No. Let's see. I'm trying to. Boy, there are a lot of pictures of you on the internet. I'll give it that.
Yeah.
Way to get your brand out there. I gotta sit at your feet as a guru one of these days and learn how to.
No. I'm not nearly as good as you think. I just surround myself with really great people. The number of times I'm doing a design, I'm on the phone constantly, Skype calls, like, I don't know how to do, Bill, help me, or whoever, help me. But, I think that's a good trait of engineers. If, the engineers that think they know it all and are too proud to just say they don't know and go out and get help.
Oh, it's true.
Design reviews. You gotta, if you don't like a design review, there's a reason,
Yeah.
Well, my problem is feeling like no one can, or like feeling alone in some things. I do have some really, really fantastic people, and I can connect you with. But it's taken me a long time to get out. Well, maybe you don't know, but this is just me. So I get in my own way and think, oh, they're too busy, or they're awesome, but they have their own things and don't have time for this. Or, like, it's not always a pride thing. Sometimes it's maybe it's just a subtle form of pride and I haven't realized that, but it's like just feeling
scary. It's scary to ask. But what I found a long time ago is there's like this virtuous loop that you can have with mentors, like, because and I kind of figured this out when I had ran into some machining mentors. So my first mentor in like mechanical and machining, he was a single person shop. He sat by himself most of the time, besides when a customer came through and dropped off something that needed to be done. And, he didn't have very many outlets in his life to really geek out about what he did. And I came into his life eager to learn how to weld and machine and turn metal. And like, it was this virtuous loop that was great. And that is so true in engineering. Like, it's so funny. I talk to various folks that aren't in engineering. They think it's glamorous. Like, yeah, one day I thought I would make AR glasses and it was just like that. And we had AR glasses and now I'm just like rolling in the cash.
Well,
no, it's like it's taken us 6 years to build this product. And I'll guarantee you it wasn't fun most of that time. It's fun now that we can play games on it.
Sporadic benevolence. I'm going to hold on to your comment. Thank you. That's something I'm going to memorize and remind myself of daily when I feel like I'm on my own and no one can help me. I'm just going to ask anyway. It's not giving up. It's refusing to give up. That's true.
Yeah.
We've had some of those people even on the show, like Eli Hughes, the full stack engineer, let's call him. You probably don't know Eli Hughes very well, but I don't know many other people who have the full spectrum of knowledge from PCB layout up to deep digital signal processing, all in one guy, and very, very experienced. And I forget, or I think, how do you unstick yourself when you're caught in a loop? Because sometimes when you're caught in those loops, you don't realize you're in a loop. Like, you can't see it.
Yeah, I have to remind some of our teams sometimes, like, you're in a startup, you're always, whether it's a business thing or an engineering thing, you run into roadblocks all the time. And sometimes those roadblocks just seem like it's such a big leap to like overcome this. And that's where I step in and like, just take the first step, just try something. Yep. And then you can move laterally from there. If that didn't work, just take that first step. Because if you look at the whole like challenge in front of you, you'll get overwhelmed and vapor locked.
Yeah, a day at a time sometimes.
Where's David? He's like pulling up the rear. He's like,
yeah, it's been a couple of minutes easily. Come on, David.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say, Jeri, you invented something in my mind. A lot of people just put the parts together. But when you saw that reverse video, that day in the lab, and then later said, that's a product. That, to me, that's innovation. So that was very cool.
What's really funny about some of this stuff, and this is a great example of it, is like, I'm like, wow, I invented something no one's ever like seen before, and I'm going to patent this. I'm an important part of a business, and we spend all this money getting patents like, filed, and we submit it, and they come back prior art. Like, what? Prior art? Who thought of doing this? Turns out in like the 20s or 30s, the early days of film, someone stumbled onto a way to do green screen by taking, a projector, shining it onto a retroreflective screen behind the actors, and then filming it.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, of course they would do it that way because they didn't have digital processing, they didn't have rotoscoping, and it's like, all right, well, I guess I can't patent that piece of it. It's like, what can't I
find something else?
Right. So,
but that's so typical in engineering. You think that you've done something new, and it's like, yeah, there's a million monkeys on keyboards out there. Have already, like, at least a dozen of them have done it before.
Before I design something, I hate designing something that's already done. Right. Yeah. So I always go, and I'm known for OEMing most of whatever it is, if I can. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So Dave's not here. You've got to get going. So
Victory by default. He DNF'd, did not finish.
I was going to say he was too scared to even show up. Is what I'm taking from this.
That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah. Scared of a girl. Yeah.
That's right. It was super fun. Thanks for letting me keep you over.
Thank you.
My team's probably like going to give me the stink eye when I walk in.
Blame me. Tell them, and I'll be by on Sunday, and they can blame me to my face.
All righty. Okay. See you guys later.
Right.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Super fun.
See you next week.
Yeah, it was fun, Jer. All right. So here we go ending the broadcast.